ever since we looked to the stars, humanity's search for higher order has been guided by the wonder of creation. From the ancient work of the Vedas, Plato, and the Pythagoreans, to the crucial discoveries of Da Vinci, Kepler, and Einstein, scientific insight has always begun with an understanding of the organizing principles of nature. Our moon, the cycles of the sun, a vast tapestry of symmetry and proportion found everywhere around us. In every era, our discovery of natural laws produced technologies to further our human aspirations, each new insight driven by the realization of a higher order, from harmonic patterns in the well-tempered system to the six-fold crystalline structures found everywhere in living nature. These discovered laws and principles are, in fact, the keys to our own survival, expressed in science, medicine, music, art, social and political organization. They are the standards we aspire towards and build from. When we discover and activate these laws, we align our efforts with the universal principle of evolution towards greater beauty and order. When we ignore them, we descend into chaos.
We are raising the sickest generation of children to ever walk the earth.
At the age of 4, he was completely nonverbal, no eye contact. I was told he had an IQ of 50.
I got a call from the emergency room in Santa Monica that he was walking down the street nude.
I have more than one friend whose child has had leukemia. I have friends who have never spoken a word to their children who are now becoming teenagers.
I was very, very sick. I was all gray, and they told me I was dying.
My name is Rachna Kapoor. I'm a medical doctor.
Hi, I'm Dr. George Rodriguez. I am a board-certified emergency medicine physician.
I'm Dr. Jennifer Barr. I am a naturopathic doctor and the founder of Resilience Naturopathic.
My name is Dr. Andrea Sullivan, and I am a naturopathic and homeopathic physician.
Most doctors are not exposed to the therapeutic power of homeopathy, but when you've seen it firsthand, mitigate someone's symptoms within sometimes seconds or minutes.
They come to homeopathy because of direct experience, that in their own lives or in their own family lives, they have had experiences with conditions that could not be treated, could not be managed well, could not even be understood through conventional methodologies. And for the most part, those physicians are now practitioners of homeopathic medicine.
I was incidentally diagnosed with a mesenteric mass. My children at that point were still very young. It was obviously very, very scary for me at that time. So I found a really seasoned surgeon at Johns Hopkins. He actually ended up resecting not just the mass, but also did a segmental bowel resection, meaning he took out 1.5 feet of my intestines. The surgery went well, but my life after that was never the same.
It was actually a case of poison ivy, poison oak that I got on a hike, and I had a bad reaction to it. And then after that, I developed sort of an immunological response, and I was diagnosed with plaque psoriasis. I subsequently developed diffuse arthritis, and as a result, I had severe pain in all of my joints. I'm a surfer, I couldn't push up to surf. It was rather debilitating because I couldn't do a lot of the things that I loved.
I was tired all the time. I had a face full of acne. I was only 28, 29, 30 years old, and I was 30 pounds overweight. And I was troubled and plagued with sore throats almost every year.
I was getting into my late 20s, and it was on my mind about whether or not I could have children. The medications that were recommended for my chronic health condition were absolutely contraindicated in pregnancy. My options were this really barbaric treatment that just seemed absolutely awful to recommend to somebody, or adoption.
I had intractable diarrhea, I had abdominal cramps. My life was a mess. that really was no way to live, but I just wasn't finding the answers in my own system of medicine that I trusted so much. It just completely failed me.
I investigated Western medicine treatment and wasn't fully satisfied that I would get a good resolution. There were topical agents which weren't really effective. There were immunosuppressant agents which I really did not want to subject my entire body to.
Having started at conventional medicine and then going through functional medicine, naturopathic medicine, in an attempt to fix my broken health, I chanced upon homeopathy.
I came upon homeopathy, and over a year period of time, I became symptom-free and have remained symptom-free from my arthritis since then.
I was treated for severe strep throat. I took a remedy, and I have not had a sore throat since.
Within just a little over a year, I was completely healed. I could actually go out and eat without any fear of getting sick. That has been completely life-changing for me.
It was the most effective medicine that I'd ever used. I was able to get off all of those chronic medications, stop having relapses, stop having flares, and I'm now the proud mother of a beautiful 3-year-old little girl who would not have been possible had I not been willing to give homeopathy a try.
That was a turning point for me. I said to myself, what is this stuff? What am I doing? So I started going back to Howard, where I was teaching at the time, and I decided to take prerequisites for medical school.
I almost quit naturopathic medical school because of homeopathy. The fact that it was part of the required curriculum made me call into question everything else about the curriculum because it just made so little sense to me. Once I figured out that homeopathy was so effective, I did a complete 180, and not only did I not quit school because of it, I decided that I needed to specialize and really learn to become an expert in homeopathy.
I was a medical doctor in my past life, actually, but now I'm a homeopath. I consider myself a healer now.
It has been used throughout the world for more than 2 centuries, championed at the highest levels of society. Gandhi said it cured more cases than any other method of treatment. After falling gravely ill and experiencing a near miraculous cure with homeopathy, Beethoven went on to compose his late string quartets, considered by many the pinnacle of Western classical music. It is used in professional sports, from the German and French national soccer teams to the world's fastest man, Usain Bolt, and soccer star David Beckham.
Homeopathy was attracting the most well-known, well-respected literary greats, corporate leaders, and educated people. Longfellow and Thoreau, Emily Dickinson and Louisa May Alcott, Mark Twain.
Throughout history, homeopathy has aligned itself with movements promoting fundamental principles of science and social thought. The American Institute of Homeopathy admitted women 5 years before the American Medical Association, with many supporters in the women's voting rights and abolitionist movements. Before he was president, Abraham Lincoln chartered a homeopathic medical college in Chicago and filled his cabinet with advocates of homeopathy. It has been praised by U.S. Presidents Rutherford B. Hayes, James Garfield, and William McKinley, who spoke publicly at the unveiling of a monument honoring homeopathy's founder, Samuel Hahnemann. To this day, one of the few monuments to a medical doctor in Washington, D.C. Over the years, there have been many famous and influential people who called for its use as a safe, gentle, cost-effective, life-saving medicine. Today, it is used by hundreds of millions worldwide, the second most common used form of medicine in the world. But for some reason, there is a widespread, misguided belief that its results are no more than mere placebo.
We have been talking about holistic health for people. Holistic health is very big in America these days, but one area that usually gets neglected is healthcare for animals. And with us today is a nationally known veterinarian and his wife. And they've together put together a book titled Dr. Pitcairn's Complete Guide to Natural Health for Dogs and Cats. Here is Dr. Richard Pitcairn and his wife, Susan Hubble Pitcairn. Welcome to the show. Susan?
I started out in my veterinary work with a desire to learn how to relieve suffering in animals and restore their health. And it wasn't being satisfied. And I had first thought that was because I didn't know enough. I began to explore other alternatives. And I came across a book on homeopathy. So I ordered this little kit. I got the flu, and I got really pretty sick. I forced myself to open the book and look up flu, saw some remedies described there, and took a dose, one dose, fell back in bed, rested for 20 minutes or so, and I woke up and I was normal. I couldn't believe it. I had no symptoms. It wasn't placebo. I didn't have confidence in it. I didn't expect to get well. That really impressed me. I didn't understand it, but somehow it works.
I've been involved in the homeopathy research field for 25 years, and what I've really noticed, it's quite strange really, is that over that time there's been a growing divergence between the actual data we have, the actual science on homeopathy, and the perception of homeopathy from the outside world.
Many people think it's quack medicine. This widespread idea that homeopathy is just a sugar pill and has to be placebo.
With the state of the current research today, that position is quite frankly becoming untenable. We now have high quality laboratory studies showing that homeopathic medicines can affect white blood cells in culture, they can affect the activity of plants, of animals. We have studies in veterinary homeopathy showing that they can prevent diarrhea in piglets in farming. And of course, we have a whole wealth of high quality clinical research studies showing effects in humans.
If you really look at the research literature in homeopathy with a critical eye, what you soon begin to realize is that there seems to be a clinical effect of homeopathy that is more than just placebo.
Generally, placebo in all the studies that have happened, it's about a 30% response rate. When we treat patients and get 80 or 90% result, that is certainly not placebo.
Animals often don't even know I've put it in the trough. They don't necessarily see me take something out of my pocket and put it in the trough in the way that if you gave a tablet to a human, you might go, oh, someone's looking after me, taking care of me, that's great, makes me feel better. I'm putting some remedy in the trough and I don't get any cases of ORF. I know it works, so I'm going to carry on using it.
The important part is, does the stuff work?
This is Joker. He's a 6-year-old border collie. Joker was a typical dog. He was running in our yard with our dog Charisma, and he managed to be looking at her and not where he was going, and he ran into a large boulder. At that time, we were not aware of the damage that he had done to his knee. It didn't look like there was anything broken other than a significant puncture to his right knee. At that point, we had 4 vets take a look at him, and he was cleared to go to World Games Sino Sports in Tennessee. And while he wanted to run, we didn't feel he was moving in the way that he should have been. So at that time, some x-rays showed us that his right kneecap had had such impact with the boulder that it actually deadened the bone, lost circulation, and a portion of that bone had died. So he lost part of his kneecap. We took him into Jody, and at that point we thought we were going to have to do management care, and he was no longer going to be able to do agility, and we would find other things that he could do.
Joker had a reaction to a medicine long ago, and it made him very, very fearful. And that's when I first started treating him homeopathically. I gave him a remedy, and he became much less fearful. In fact, pretty much not fearful. Bones don't have a lot of vasculature. And usually if a bone loses its vasculature due to trauma, it won't grow back. Animals don't have a placebo effect. The placebo of just being kind to them doesn't fix these diseases. It doesn't get kidney failure to resolve. It doesn't get heart disease to get better. It doesn't get a lame animal to start walking. But when I give the correct homeopathic remedy to them, all of these things can be resolved. I would never guarantee that, but what I can say is that if we give the right remedy, they get better. So it's pretty unusual. It's very unusual that all of a sudden, he gets it rechecked and it's back and it's there again.
Through homeopathic and being able to work with him, Joker regrew his kneecap. To me, that is amazing and nothing short of a miracle. He, since then, has made the world team with my daughter and the junior team twice, and he was competing last year in Finland as well and took 4th. That is unbelievable given what he had to come back from.
At a time when we need individualized medicine more than ever, homeopathy presents a solution with the potential to change the lives of millions. Today, about 10% of the global population has adopted its use, but there seems to be a lingering information gap in the rest of the world, and many who support it, with a misguided understanding of what it actually is.
Homeopathy.
Apathy.
Homeopathy.
Homeopathy?
Apathy.
I have never heard of it.
Is it like holistic medicine?
Like an herbal medicine?
I mean, I know what a homeopath is. Isn't that like almost like an herbalist?
Like natural medicine? Is that what it is?
I have not heard much about homeopathic medicine. Mr. Softy's right there.
Is it like holistic medicine?
Like an herbal medicine? A more natural method? Do I sound really dumb on a documentary?
So I'm new to Philly, so I don't know the area well. Who's Samuel Hahnemann?
The law of similars, upon which homeopathy is based, was not invented by humans. It is based on a phenomenon observed in nature. In his published work, The Organon of Medicine, Samuel Hahnemann, the founder of homeopathy, records observing diseases cancel one another out based on the similarity of their symptoms.
Homeopathic medicine is a system of medicine that's been around for more than 2 centuries.
The word itself is a composite of 2 Greek words, homion and pathos, similar suffering. In homeopathy, as a practitioner, we try to give a medicine which produces similar symptoms to the effects of the disease presented before us. That's why it's called similar suffering.
The body's always trying to heal itself, and when we're sick, it's struggling in that fight. So the symptoms that we express are the reflection of that struggle, not of the disease itself. This principle of similars, when you stimulate with a substance that produces a similar state to their illness, the response is healing, not suppression.
The law of similars is a universal thing. For example, in noise-cancelling technology, you can sample the noise and play it back, the same noise, and it'll cancel itself out. So we know that similars as a principle of removing existing phenomena is there generally. Another example of similars, the case of neurosyphilis. In its final stage, it affects the brain and it produces a type of what we call encephalopathy, where the brain looks like Swiss cheese. It's got pockets, holes developing. A few decades ago, for antibiotics. They would give people with neurosyphilis malaria, because malaria, which produces a similar spongiform encephalopathy, was treatable. It, if you like, overran the syphilitic symptoms, and it could be controlled.
If you have a high fever and you apply pharmaceutical medication to lower the fever, what you're doing is you're going against the body's natural response. What you really want to do is you want to go with the direction the body's already going. For example, putting someone into a warm bath when they have a fever, you're giving the body assistance in the direction it's already going and allowing it to effectively combat and overcome the illness. Hahnemann's observation that when you treat individuals through suppressing their symptoms, they never get well. In fact, the longer you use suppressive approaches, the more likely it is that the person's state of health diminishes.
I was pregnant with Anahea when I lost my mom unexpectedly. A few years later, we lost Alex's father. And actually, that was right after Kaleo was diagnosed with autism.
Between her mom passing and my dad passing and COVID and the deployment and all that stuff.
Especially with him gone, as a firefighter, it was definitely hard. You definitely need a lot of help. He never, ever slept well. From the moment he was born, he was up every few hours. Lots of tantrums, lots of hitting, lots of screaming and yelling and not knowing why. A very big diagnosis with not a lot of hope. It was terrifying.
The vital force, the force within us that orders, balances, and heals. We were all born with the ability to heal ourselves. The body uses symptoms as its toolbox. When it gets stuck in the process and is not able to move through full healing, symptoms persist. You have a nagging cough that goes on for 3 months. You have indigestion that seems to be part of your life now. Whatever the situation is, your body tried. It just got stuck. The homeopathic remedy helps stimulate your own healing faculties.
Hahnemann says that suffering is the blueprint of its own cure. Every system of medicine first requires that you translate the suffering of the patient into that medicine's paradigm of function. You give a remedy to a patient because you have selected certain symptoms, principally found in one particular homeopathic medicine. You give the medicine, the pattern of symptomatology should clearly shift.
The remedy that will help that individual recover from whatever they're suffering is the remedy that best matches the pattern of illness that they're exhibiting at the time that they come to see you.
So the physician looks for a drug or medicine which is known to produce effects similar to the disease presented. When we give a dose of that drug, it improves the symptoms. That's the whole basis of homeopathy.
The beauty of homeopathy is that instead of trying to overpower its natural healing responses with strong, potent, sometimes toxic medicines, we give very gentle, safe medicines which simply provide the appropriate information or stimulus for the body to heal itself.
I remember being in the hospital after I had my cyst burst. It ended up popping the blood vessel and I lost 1 liter of blood internally. And after that, doctors were able to go in and kind of see that I had like cysts and I had issues. They told me that I would have a really hard time getting pregnant
which was very scary for me because I had just been married.
I've always wanted a big family. I have a sister of my own. Seeing a couple other friends, they have like multiple siblings and they just always have so much fun and they're super close. Whether either they're fighting or getting along, it doesn't matter. It's never boring, and that's always something I wanted growing up.
After hearing that from the doctors, I had to tell my new husband at the time that this was an issue, and I knew he had wanted like 4 kids. So it was really nerve-wracking for me.
She talked to me and explained to me everything that she was going through and how she can have a family due to her medical conditions, and I came to terms with being okay not having a family. I was willing to sacrifice that because I loved her.
They knew I was getting these cysts, and they told me I didn't have endometriosis, which was good, but they still didn't know really what was wrong with me. And I was like, okay, well, is there something to keep the cysts away? And they told me, no, there's no option for that. And that kind of blew my mind. I was like, how is there nothing medically to help with this issue?
Now, there's nothing wrong particularly with the allopathic model, but when it comes to chronic problems, and especially chronic problems for which they don't have particularly effective treatments, it kind of falls apart.
Clearly, conventional medicine has its place addressing, serious injury, serious trauma, surgical issues, and sometimes life-threatening conditions. But instead of constantly managing disease, homeopathy will effectively restore health rather than simply put a Band-Aid on their symptoms.
Conventional medicine is institutionalized. 60% of the people benefited from this medicine, so we're going to give it to everybody. And in homeopathy, it's the polar opposite. It's individualized.
Every individual is different. Our genetics are similar, but they are not the same. Our environment is similar, but is not the same. And our experiences in life, including physical and emotional, were not the same. And the trick in homeopathy is not to find a new drug, it is to find the appropriate drug for the individual person.
The art of homeopathy is actually selecting the homeopathic medicine that will provide the greatest healing for the individual patient. Listening to all aspects of their symptoms, what it is, when is it better, when is it worse? Is it stabbing pain? Is it aching pain? Is it throbbing pain? So it's not that they're giving a homeopathic medicine for headaches, they're giving a homeopathic medicine just for you.
I can vividly remember my dad telling me that there was something different about me. I wasn't happy. I had issues with bullying when I was young. I developed a really low self-esteem, developed a fear of social settings and just being around other people. At the age of like 11 or 12, I started building these pathways in my brain where I would escape through, whether it was imagination or physical activity, going out, biking my heart out, skating my heart out for like hours. I was escaping what was going on the inside and how I was feeling. So I found drugs and alcohol when I was 13 years old. I remember smoking pot for the first time and thinking, I'll be able to live. Everything will be okay. Because when I smoked the pot, it made me feel the relief that I didn't feel when I was a little boy. I was using hard drugs. I started using Oxycontin in high school. Looking back on it a decade plus later, I can actually be like, yeah, you were part of the opioid epidemic. That did happen, and that's okay. I didn't really have any plans, any, dreams for my life. Basically, it formulated this idea that, it would be really cool to live in Los Angeles. I can be close to a lot of skateboarding, a lot of fun, the beach. And so I decided to move up to Los Angeles.
These are my original dog tags with a P38, a canister. So we all had a little canister attached to our dog tags, We used to sometimes heat stuff in our helmets with C4 because you could burn C4. We use C4 as a heating agent to heat up food. Yeah, under the helmet. Yeah. 1967, 68, I was drafted to Vietnam. I was in 9th Infantry Platoon. We were over with 289 guys. And 5 of us came home on one fight. And that weighed a lot on me. My medal's here. Only one I'm missing is a Purple Heart. I was wounded in Vietnam, but because I didn't want my parents to know, I rejected letting the Red Cross know that I was wounded because they would have notified my parents. I got the Bronze Star with the V device because we were being martyred, and so I was just dropping rounds in it, sending rounds back around us, and because of that, we saved our troops. I came home with lots of issues. I went into the VA one day, and my left arm, I couldn't move it. It was numb. My heart, they said, was likened probably to Agent Orange in Vietnam. I'm serious when I tell you this. I mean, I was sick, and they told me I was dying.
In conventional treatment, everything is taken in parts. You have a doctor for your stomach, a doctor for your heart, a doctor for your kidneys. Even though they understand it's part in the whole body, they're treating as a priority that organ in itself. Whereas in homeopathy, we understand that every part is so integrated with every other part, you cannot separate them.
The individual is a whole. You can't fragment them. It's a mistake to do that. So if you say, okay, I'm going to treat part of this individual, and the practices coming from that are not really serving what that individual is, which is a whole being.
We take the whole person into account. You have to take the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual as a continuum.
We're always looking at the interactions of the whole being. We use symptoms and we use the history of the problem, their relationships, their job, their habits, their nutrition, all the different aspects that makes them who they are. Once we have that clear understanding of how the pieces fit together, we can then give the homeopathic remedy, which is designed to stimulate that person's organism to restore its own health.
Because we individualize every case. What is your particular problem? And now that is personalized care.
You know, I think people are thirsty for having someone not just listen, but try to understand the root causes of what their condition is. Then they have an opportunity to really have a radical change in their health.
Medicine and science evolved out of our essential connection to the natural world. Seeking answers to questions like, what is our nature, the nature of knowledge, and even the nature of truth. Western medicine, from its roots in Greece and Rome, grew out of debates between the original rational and the empirical schools of medical thought, two fundamentally distinct philosophies. In today's medicine, rationalist thought is reflected in the trend towards specialization, the idea that the human being is a mere assembly of parts, each to be treated by a separate specialty. Holistic medicine, treating the person as a whole, is a fundamental outgrowth of the empiricist tradition, approaching health and disease through the interconnection of all life and the needs of each unique individual. Samuel Hahnemann, the founder of homeopathy, was a great empiricist thinker and polymath genius who devoted his life to serving humanity. Born in the picturesque town of Meissen, Germany in 1755, the young Hahnemann was a brilliant student, at just 12 years old, actually teaching his peers, not just in his native German, but in the Greek language.
Hahnemann was a sort of a child prodigy. When his father couldn't afford to keep him in school, the principal of the school, his teacher, could see he was gifted and petitioned him to go for free.
Just 5 years after graduating as a medical doctor, Hahnemann decided to give up his practice, feeling that the procedures of his day, bloodletting, mercury, and other poisonous substances, did patients more harm than good. For the next 20 years, Hahnemann worked as a medical translator, moving his growing family from town to town, never stopping more than a few months. Throughout this period, his dedication to truth and the medical arts never waned.
After I had discovered the weakness and the errors of my teachers and books, I sank into a state of sorrowful indignation. I was on the point of concluding that the whole art was vain and incapable of improvement. I gave myself up to solitary reflection and resolved not to terminate my train of thought until I had arrived at a definite conclusion on the subject.
It was in 1790, as he worked on a translation of William Cullen's Materia Medica, that Hahnemann made the discovery that marked the formal beginning of the system of medicine known as homeopathy.
Missionaries had brought this bark from Peru that was very effective in treating fever. Most medicines didn't have that much effect. For some reason, this one did. It was a question of why. When he was translating this book, in this book said, "Oh, it's because it's a bitter substance." And Hahnemann writes, this can't be the explanation because there's other herbs more bitter and they don't have any effect.
And he did something which no one else had done before him. He methodically experimented taking Peruvian bark in the therapeutic dose, but a small therapeutic dose, and he records the effects.
My feet and fingertips at first became cold. I became languid and drowsy. All the symptoms usually associated with intermittent fever appeared in succession. I discontinued the medicine and I was once more in good health.
And in his translation, he puts a footnote in the German to say that perhaps a similes principle, which had been observed in medicine since Hippocrates, was at play.
Hahnemann surmised that the medical effect of the bitter preparation he tested on himself had nothing to do with its bitterness, but to the canceling principle of similars, which had been observed but never subjected to rigorous scientific investigation until then.
What he then did, he set about for 6 years experimenting with other drugs. And he found in every case that he tested that each one of them produced similar symptoms to what they were known to remove in mainstream medicine. So then he writes a paper in 1796 on the idea of a new principle in medicine, that is one of similars, and hence the word he coined homeopathy.
So when Casey was 13 or 14, while she was on her menstrual cycle, her pain was so bad. I mean, so bad. I've never experienced anything like that. So I was sort of at a loss what to do. She was so sick the first few days, I would have to keep her out of school, throwing up. She would turn pale, couldn't get out of bed.
I would have the most painful period cramps every month. I was also irregular, so I would go anywhere from missing a period for 3 months to having one too soon. I had gone to see a couple doctors and they kind of just blew the pain off as oh, it's just period pain. That's kind of just what women have to deal with, especially because I was only in middle school when this was all happening, so I was young and no one really believed me but my mom.
I just went to the doctor pleading for help. I said, well, is this the start of endometriosis? And the doctor said, could be, just like that, nonchalant, I was so concerned for her fertility, and I told the doctor that as well, and she said it could affect her fertility. And there off I went with my daughter, devastated.
Homeopathy could almost be defined as a systematic way of researching nature, substances, and how they affect human beings. These are called provings. Hahnemann began that journey and was very methodical in his approach. Those experiments have been continuing through to today.
So proving is a methodical drug trial of a substance on a human physiology.
What it is testing substances to see what they will do in a healthy person or animal, if it were done in an animal. So we know how to match the remedy to the natural symptoms.
It is interesting to note that the first double-blind mass placebo study ever done was conducted by homeopaths in 1885, 40 years before it was adopted into conventional medicine. So the gold standard of medical testing actually emerged from homeopathic practices.
What do you think autism is?
It's just that anything you say, you just repeat that over and over again. And dinosaurs eat teeth. Open. And it's yours. And teeth. And it's yours. And teeth. It's that his body can't understand what he's doing. He just came like that.
He just came like that into the world.
He had problems with his bone growth. He had the bones of a 3 or 4-year-old when he was 6 years old. He had failure to thrive. He was constantly sick. He barely had any vocabulary at all. And any vocabulary that he did have was just really repeating what he heard on the iPad. It wasn't really engaging in speech. There wasn't much engagement at all.
We can't just ask him, what's wrong? Where does it hurt? How was your day? Or how do you feel about that? They don't really give you options, honestly. It's here's the diagnosis, and we don't really know the endpoint because autism is a spectrum. He has ADHD because that's often really common with kids who have autism. There's medication for that. We reached a point with the sleep stuff where we tried medication because we were feeling really hopeless.
Yeah.
And honestly, it didn't help. When it didn't help, they said, well, there are other options, but basically it wasn't going to solve all of the sleep issues. It just might help. It was pretty hopeless. He was 6 years old when he had his first seizure, and we were at occupational therapy, and I went to pick him up, and he wasn't there. They didn't bring him out, and I thought, that's weird. They're usually really on time, and she brought him out, and she was carrying him, and she said to me, has he ever had a seizure before? And I said, no. And when I looked at him, he was pale, and his eyes were kind of shifted to the side, and she said, I think he's having a seizure right now. And I panicked. For me, it was terrifying. My son was pale and unresponsive, but I think the hardest part for me in the moment was when we called Alex on FaceTime, and the paramedics were there, and Alex was really emotional, yelling for Kaleo, and him getting emotional really frightened me. They said, we need to go to the hospital because whatever they were giving him wasn't helping, and it had been almost 30 minutes. And I was asking what's going on, and they're like, he's not responding, but we're going to get to the hospital, and the whole thing was absolutely terrifying. And it wasn't until we got to the hospital that he got seizure medication that he finally came out of it, and that was about an hour into the seizure. So he had a really long seizure. It was horrible. Absolutely horrible. Definitely the scariest day of my life, for sure. I thought he was gonna die.
Wow, I forgot about some of these. We had a dog in Vietnam called Pele. He used to go on missions with us. This is Michael Raspberry. He was from Oklahoma, and he was very prejudiced when I met him. He came to visit me and my family. We were on leave. He told my parents that he apologized for being prejudiced. That shocked me. Of course, he passed away in my arms in Vietnam. I had survivor's guilt real bad when I first came home. Drugs and alcohol. Thought I was keeping it a secret. But my mom knew, she knew. But she didn't pressure me or push me or anything. She just let it be, and then finally I got help from the VA. In 1994, I was not feeling well. They took tests for me, of me and all that kind of stuff. One doctor came in and said that he was referring me to another doctor because he didn't want to treat me because I was positive. This medicine that they were giving me for HIV was so toxic to me, I got kidney stones 3 times. Finally got the medicines to where they worked, but I was having eye issues, borderline diabetic, heart issues, kidney issues. They actually told me that I was going to die to get my things in order. I was walking with a cane and I was all gray and, you know, barely could move, barely could actually think, really.
He wasn't doing well when we first started together, and he was on a severe decline. One day, he called and said, "I'm really sick." And so I came in, I said, "Just lay down," and made him a chicken soup, which in my parlance is care and love.
My heart was bad, and they wanted to do surgery immediately.
After his heart surgery, they said, "Oh, we did 5-way heart bypass because every vein on his heart was blocked." And they trace it back to his exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam.
Sometimes, the most powerful evidence for a treatment doesn't come from medical research, but comes from history. And in America and throughout the world, homeopathy in the 19th century became very popular for one reason.
Over the years, homeopathy has shown great success in the treatment and prevention of epidemics. Large-scale incidents that claimed thousands of lives, like typhus in 1813, cholera in 1831, and the Great Influenza pandemic of 1918, saw mortality rates many times higher for conventional patients than those under homeopathic care. And there are numerous instances throughout history where homeopathic treatment has been especially successful in lowering the mortality rate and saving millions of lives. Perhaps the most notable 20th century application on a large scale took place in Cuba, where in 2007, 2.4 million people were given homeopathic treatment in anticipation of the annual, deadly leptospirosis season.
We were facing an epidemic, a dangerous epidemic in a region of Cuba, and then we used homeopathic remedies to treat 2.4 million people. We were running against time, and we didn't have any other conventional alternative to face this epidemic. So we choose the homeopathic remedies because it can be prepared very fast and can be distributed very fast as well. And the results are continuously impressing me because in the time frame of 2 weeks, we will be able to decrease the incidence of the disease below to the historical levels of the disease. If you know a little bit about leptospirosis, you could imagine that it is very difficult to reach that, even with a very effective vaccine.
Incidence of the disease, and therefore death, was significantly reduced, and interestingly, remained low for many years after. The experience also points to the cost efficiency of homeopathic treatment, showing that whenever storage and distribution of medicines might be an issue, homeopathy offers tangible benefits. One of the places homeopathy has seen strong clinical traction is in Romania, where busy clinicians see 40 or more patients a day, using homeopathy as the method of primary care.
I'm practicing homeopathy for almost 35 years. I practiced for 5 years only allopathy. I was not very happy with the medical thinking, which is dividing the man in pieces. Now I'm doing exclusively homeopathy. Okay. I would say homeopathy is a noble art. For a medical doctor, that's a very dignifying profession. Boom, bravo, bravo, frumos. This boy with a diagnosis of scarlet fever or scarlatina already took antibiotics, but probably the antibiotics didn't cover the spectrum of sensitivity. The rash is all over the body, enlarged tonsils almost uniting, terrible pains and fever. We began the homeopathic treatment. After 3 days, you can see the aspect of the throat and of the face. In 7 days, the rash is normalized. I continued the homeopathic treatment for 1 month more, preventing complications. Power of homeopathy in acute cases in children. It's amazing, and fortunately we have more and more homeopaths or doctors who practice homeopathy, and they refer patients to me. Some of them are treating their children here or themselves here. I'm very proud about this integration. A girl of 6 years old was sent to me by a colleague. We have a chalazion. She was proposed for anti-inflammatory drugs, followed by an operation. The parents decided to try something else. After 1 month, the inflammation recedes completely. The keys disappear after 2 months and a half. There is a woman of 65 with an impetigo. The face was cracked, the hands were cracked. The lesions are serious. Wow. She was proposed for hospitalization. Fortunately, with the proper remedy, she responded well. First of all, the inflammation around the mouth and the face recedes, then the inflammation on hands and then on lower limbs. It's a serious case of pustular psoriasis. It's treated normally with high doses of cortisone. We begin the homeopathic treatment without anything else. You can see the large blisters that appeared. Slowly, the whole aspect of the disease recedes. And she's okay now for 3 years. Maybe half of my patients are children. It's a wonder, not just to treat acute disease, which is possible with homeopathy, but also to make an active prevention and to help them in their development as human beings in all aspects, both physically and psychologically. Da, mama? Da. 3 granule pe zi. Iei 6 din 7. Instead of taking 10 of different pills, you can take some globuli or some drops, and that's it.
Ma aveți rețeta de acum 5 ani.
Posso vă zic, pulsatila ce
Normally I see from 20 to 40 consultations a day. I think in these years of practice I saw maybe 250,000 patients. I think the most important part is the results and the fact that it's more affordable than the allopathy.
I think that a large part of me wanted to leave my drug addiction behind in San Diego, and I was not able to do that.
Going from that transition from high school to college, he had issues before that, but it wasn't until, this transition in life that it really became apparent.
What it really was a string of heartbreaks. I went through a breakup with a girl. I was feeling all alone and cornered and reckless. That dangerous and risky thing was going into North Hollywood at like 2 in the morning and looking for cocaine, and like after hours of not able to find cocaine, the guy I was with suggested we tried meth. And the fact that I did end up doing it was just another kind of part of who I was as an individual. I'd compromised my morals just to get by and just to maintain. My life kind of changed that night when I smoked meth for the first time, because it immediately brought to life the dormant bipolar that I had been dealing with my entire young life. I was 19 when I was first diagnosed. That was my first experience with methamphetamine.
One day I got a call from the emergency room in Santa Monica that he was walking down the street nude. He had taken his clothes off and was walking down the street nude. And the hospital said they wanted to keep him for a few days. And I said, no, I want to, come up there and get him and bring him home.
My life got progressively worse. It got so scary to the point where I was in the room and I'm sharing needles with people who have like Hep C. Like I'm sharing needles with people who could potentially get me really sick.
Prefrontal cortex, especially in men, is not fully formed until the age of 25 or 26. Giving anybody a medication that will impair, supplant, override, hijack their natural neurotransmitter system is going to create a human being with a compromised physiology and anatomy.
I was born a highly sensitive person. At 21, they said I had bipolar. So I was put on 4 psych meds, and I took those for a long time, up until about 11 years ago. I was put into a psychiatric hospital, and they took away my Paxil, which we now know causes withdrawals. I fell into 3 years of deep, severe depression. I circulated through 7 hospitalizations in psychiatry. They couldn't figure out what was wrong.
Greg had been suffering with depression, primarily, and had been given many medications over the years. So his first institutionalization was at the age of 21. We meet him today at 48 years old. From the very beginning, Greg was anxious, hesitant, very common. It's traumatic to go through a circumstance where you don't have any sovereignty and you can't make decisions for yourself and you're under the effect of being medicated. Greg was like that.
We were looking for answers right and left, and we were going to the mental health system hard. We were saying what we were told. This is bipolar. That's what we had accepted. Something was wrong with me. Basically, I was hijacked by the mental health system. I find that's the problem with the healthcare system, is that people are not trying to do anything wrong. They're trying to do what's right. They're trying to get better. We just don't understand the side effects.
It's a noble pursuit to want to get off these drugs. But if you don't do it in a way that supports the body and all the things that were suppressed and all the things that didn't have a chance to fully form, it's only part of the picture. What's beautiful about homeopathy is we don't need them to come off the medication in order for the remedies to have effectiveness.
I was never suicidal. It's not part of my personality. But I did lose capacity to live life again. I started doing ECTs, or shock therapy. Homeopathy saved me from a lot of things. I would be homeless without homeopathy. It saved my life. I had realized lifelong issues of my trauma. It was a flash that I understood everything when I got off the benzodiazepine. I did not understand who I was, and homeopathy has given me my identity back.
The thing that I'm asked most often about homeopathy is, does it really work? People say it to me like, you can tell me, off the record. And it does make me laugh because, yes, it works. I've been involved in the homeopathy research field for 25 years. We've got more and more data, and yet the topic seems to be more and more controversial. There's a myth out there that there's no high-quality research in homeopathy, and in fact, it's completely the opposite.
To me, it's remarkable that skeptics commonly say that there is no research on homeopathic medicine. The government of Switzerland, they determined that there was a significant body of evidence that homeopathic medicines work, and also that the homeopathic medicines have very specific physiological effects.
Using the same type of research techniques that you use to test pharmaceutical drugs. We have real-world effectiveness studies, as they're called, where we track thousands of patients through their normal treatment, having homeopathy and comparing it with conventional medicine. The rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trials that are considered gold standard for testing pharmaceutical drugs.
My experience is that these skeptics have not reviewed the studies that have been conducted. One of the studies that I helped conduct was homeopathic treatment of fibromyalgia. And this was a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial that spanned the course of a year. We found that homeopathy was significantly beneficial.
This is an older study from 2005, but it was published in Chest, which is a very reputable conventional medical journal. It was a study of patients in the intensive care unit who were on a ventilator. The authors randomized half of them to receive a homeopathic medicine, and the patients who received the homeopathic medicine had a significantly shorter time weaning from the ventilator and a shorter intensive care unit stay.
There was a very recent study just done in France. It covers 98,000 women who'd had a mastectomy for non-metastatic breast cancer. And what they found was that the women who used homeopathic medicines as well as conventional oncology had fewer side effects. What they could see was that homeopathic medicines were really making these women better able to tolerate their conventional cancer care and therefore have better quality of life. It really shows how homeopathy can contribute alongside conventional medicine as a sort of integrated approach to healthcare. One of the largest studies ever done in humans tracked 8,500 patients in France who were being treated by over 800 doctors. In this study, they split the patients into 3 groups, treated by conventional GPs, medical doctors just using conventional medicine, patients who were treated with homeopathy, and medical doctors using conventional medicine and homeopathy. And what they found when they just observed all of those patients being treated in these different ways was that the patients who were treated with homeopathy had better clinical outcomes or the same clinical outcomes, but they used far fewer pharmaceutical drugs. And I think more and more people are really interested in that approach.
I became chronically sick. I'd had many antibiotics for various UTIs, and it really destroyed my body. Over time, I developed an autoimmune disease called interstitial cystitis, and it's a very painful bladder disease. The first doctor that I went to gave me 3 options. She started with this pill that might make some or all of my hair fall out, she said, but it could maybe numb my bladder. We can give you opioids, but we're going to have you join a support group for the addiction that you're going to develop. The last thing she offered was this device that you can insert like a tampon, and it electrocutes your bladder, and basically that would numb the nerves and you would go for a period of the day without pain. That's not what I want to do. My husband and I sunk $30,000 in savings, $30,000 in credit card debt, looking for alternatives. It wasn't until I turned to homeopathy that I really began to see gains in my health. And over the course of a year of being under homeopathic treatment, my bladder condition was completely better. And I was just amazed.
Lily first came to see me for help with her son Kaleo, who was having severe seizures that could last up to an hour long at a time.
Since we've started homeopathy, he has had no seizures.
Yeah.
He's happier, he's talking more. He's making more connections with people, his teachers. You know, when we started homeopathy, they said, you know, whatever you're doing, keep doing that. Because he's having amazing days at school.
In the last couple of months especially, we've seen mostly his purposeful movements or purposeful speech more than anything really make progress. And that is something that's been, you know, a dramatic change since last year.
Repeat after me. Is sunny.
Sunny.
He's always showing us more than we've taught him, which is inspiring and helps us to craft his education and just push him farther every day. What would you like me to draw?
Sure. Weather vane flamingo.
A weather vane with a flamingo?
big flamingo or a little flamingo?
Big flamingo.
A big one? Is it on a house or a barn?
Barn.
A barn. There we go.
Draw in the sun.
There's a sun? Okay. Where does the sun go?
Right here, sun.
A big sun?
Okay. Right here, weathering sun. It's a weathering flamingo.
Oh. Awesome. Should we color that later?
So I met Kaleo last year. We've been so thrilled to see so much growth in him. I mean, even just in the past few months, he's responding verbally to either directions or questions that we're giving him and responding most of the time on topic. Whereas in the beginning, it was almost like he was in his own world much more of the time than we see now. I don't know a whole lot about homeopathy per se, but what I do know is what Kaleo must be doing at home in conjunction with what our team is doing here has just provided significant growth for him. That's really been eye-opening for us and really, really thrilling to see.
Initially, when we first started therapy, Kaleo's inability to follow commands and follow through on just simple directions was difficult. He really would not engage in anything where his feet were off the ground. He displayed huge gravitational insecurity, so he would very quickly go into fight or flight, and he would be in a dysregulated state, and he would have a huge meltdown. For a child who refused to get this much off the ground, he is now swinging on a trapeze, he is now swinging on a platform swing. I think the homeopathy has made a huge difference. His ability to show independence in play, his ability to show imagination, he is definitely evolving. This little individual has so much potential, and he's now able to reach that potential. I definitely think that the homeopathy has played a huge part in how his nervous system is being rewired.
While scientific research strongly backs homeopathy's effectiveness in a clinical setting, most challenges to its widespread acceptance come from the fact that the application of homeopathic medicines operates outside of Western medicine's established biochemical-based understanding of the human body. And that science and technology are still catching up to the point where they have the tools to visualize the physics in the mechanism of action of homeopathic remedies. The result is that many families with real need still don't know that it can offer hope.
People seem to think that if you're a serious scientist, you don't believe in homeopathy. But we have Nobel laureates like Professor Luc Montagnier, Professor Brian Josephson, who really the top minds of their generation, and they are saying absolutely homeopathy works.
When we look at traditions like homeopathy, they fall out of favor with mainstream research because they're still looking at things from a very rudimentary biochemical point of view.
Somewhere between 1812 and 1814, Hahnemann was using more material doses of medicines for his practice, but there could be powerful aggravations of sensitive patients before they got well, and he wanted to avoid that. Then he began to experiment with diluted doses, a fraction of a drop. By about 1814, he's talking about his diluting and shaking of a remedy. Instead of being weakening, it's strengthening, potentization. That the more he developed the shaking and grinding, the more powerful the effect of the remedy. He felt that the friction and dilution released a medicinal energy that was before that unknown. That's weird.
At the time, no one was thinking of quantum mechanics or quantum physics, but perhaps that's actually what explains what makes these homeopathic medicines so valuable.
100 years ago. At the beginning of quantum physics, the physicists thought the physical world was solid and real, and they wanted to study the basic components going down to the bottom. They found out that there was no physical reality, there was only energy fields. They're saying at the bottom, there's just energy that takes form. This is what Hahnemann said. The allopathic system really doesn't accept the principles of quantum physics, the idea that there's energetic configurations behind everything physical. So much of our world today, our phones, our computers, all our devices are based on quantum physics principles, and yet our system of medicine has put all that aside as somehow not relevant.
It seems to be the general view among scientists that homeopathy is impossible because it's just water, but water can have a structure. It's a collection of atoms or molecules arranged in particular ways, so water could have an influence, and it would be important to research that.
Dr. Luc Montagnier won the Nobel Prize for outstanding discoveries in the field of medicine, and later dedicated himself to pioneering research into what has been termed the memory of water. It started when Montagnier made a puzzling observation in the study of bacteria often found alongside the HIV virus. After preparing a pure culture of the bacteria, he carefully filtered the container, removing all traces of the bacteria and its DNA, leaving a sterile liquid filtrate, which he tested using PCR technology to confirm no trace of the original bacteria or its DNA. He then poured the sterile filtrate into a fresh culture of peptides, which, to his surprise, assembled a DNA sequence 99% identical to the original. Montagnier hypothesized that this liquid filtrate contained some sort of undetectable information carrier.
The term water memory appeared following the research of Jacques Benveniste, where they saw some effects of homeopathy, so high dilutions of water. And so the French journalists coined this term memory of water. The idea that water would retain specific information that would have effects on biological material, even though in principle there is only water in the dilutions at that point.
I came across water memory many years ago, but got to be quite controversial. What struck me is the way people seem to attack it. Said it's impossible for water to have a memory, and they have easily understood but invalid arguments, such as, for example, it's just water after you've done your high dilution, but the arrangement of water molecules clearly could have an effect.
Hoping to discover the source of his findings, Montagnier prepared the same sterile dilution, a process remarkably similar to the preparation of homeopathic medicines. A test tube of the prepared filtrate was then placed inside a wire coil receiver, which detected minute electrical signals emanating from the vial. Remarkably, Montagnier noticed that if a second test tube of peptides was placed near the original diluted solution, it would again produce a copy of the bacterial DNA simply by being in proximity to the electrical signals.
Not only matter, but also waves are used to transmit information. And this is now opening up something new in biology and also in medicine.
Beyond opening a window for how we can begin to understand the mechanism of action in homeopathic medicines, Montagnier's research helps visualize the beginnings of how frequency and electromagnetic fields play into our microbiology.
Another significant body of work is the work of Dr. Stephen Cartwright.
We've now got to the point after sort of 6 years of research in developing this system that if you brought two samples to me, one which was just ordinary water and one which was serially diluted in succussed solution, we could tell the difference between those two samples. There is definitely something in the diluted and succussed solutions that isn't present in simple control water. And whatever that is, I mean, well, let's call it X because we don't know what it is as yet, but that X is responsible for the therapeutic activity of potencies.
there is clearly some kind of electromagnetic component to those homeopathic potencies.
There's a place for targeted biomedicine that works with the chemical aspect of the body. But that doesn't mean we need to leave out all of these traditions and practices like homeopathy that have understood the role of working with the energy of the body. Because when you change the energy, you change the blood chemistry and you change the trajectory of health.
We just did a clinic up in northern Minnesota. The grandmother comes, she said, my grandson has eczema, he's 6 months old, on his face, all over his body, and the doctor said to just give him bleach baths, which, I mean, I can't tell you, that went to my core. She brought him in, he had these little mitts on because he kept scratching, it was super itchy, and so we gave him a remedy. The next day, the mom sent pictures of his face. And his face totally cleared up, like overnight. It was amazing. I've never seen a physical change that quickly.
My son was very impacted by autism, and at the age of 4, he was completely nonverbal, no eye contact. I was told he had an IQ of 50, he'd never go to regular school. The school psychologist told me at this age, if he's not on medication, he's going to end up in restraints. So I went to a homeopath looking for an alternative to medication because the kids in his class who are on medication had become what I call zombified. They were, really out of it. I was in shock by the results with homeopathy. I had stopped using an alarm months before because he would wake up screaming every morning and the bed would be wet. And after the second dose of the homeopathic remedy, I woke up and the house was quiet. And I thought, oh my God, he's dead. I ran to his room and there he was sitting up smiling. The bed was dry. And he said, "Good morning, Mommy." And it's like, for something like that to happen to your child at the age of 9, it's amazing. And I have to say, for the first 6 months, I was like, I don't want to jinx this, so I hardly talked about it. But then I went for the midterm parent-teacher meetings, and they said to me, "We think he should be reevaluated because we don't think he belongs in the autism program anymore." And he was moved into general ed.
I want to be an NBA player when I grow up. I want to be drafted.
Right after Casey got married, I got a call that Casey was in a lot of pain, and so her husband said that we're going to take her to the ER. They didn't know what was wrong, so they thought it was appendix. I honestly thought maybe it's a cyst, just because I know Casey's past problems. And so when they did the CAT scan, sure enough, it was a cyst that burst. It was on her ovary, and I said, "Well, did you save her ovaries? Is she going to be able to have children?" And she said, "It may be hard to get pregnant." That's where I started diving deep into what else is there out there? What could we try?
She always wanted a big family. That's something that she always had dreamed of. And, having a diagnosis of both PCOS and thyroid conditions can be an inhibiting factor in that regard.
So Gabrielle really helped me with homeopathy to regulate things and get more in a flow of normality when it came to just the menstrual cycle in general. We started with my thyroid problem. That plays an important role in fertility. Once I got my thyroid levels in check, we went more into the cyst problem. And then with the pain, that was like, there would be months where I would feel like no pain at all, which is amazing. It's amazing.
It makes me nervous for like other women that experience stuff like this, that are getting pushed aside and told that this pain is normal for women to experience when it's very much not. My homeopath has been giving me different remedies to keep all my cysts at bay. I think that's been the main aspect for my fertility issues. Because after that was when we conceived.
I couldn't even hold it. I had to call my family like literally the next hour saying that Casey's pregnant, jumping around, because that was the last thing I would ever expect to come out of her mouth. It makes me emotional right now. I knew that it wasn't a guaranteed, and I didn't want to take it for granted.
If we have so many people using homeopathy, then should we not invest some brain power into really figuring out what is happening there for their health? As a scientist, when we look at the research, we see results beyond placebo that should really inspire scientists to ask the question, that is the beginning for me of the scientific investigation. We don't understand something, let's find out what's happening.
One of the most exciting research studies I saw recently was actually where they've started to explore homeopathic medicines on strawberry crops. And what they found there was that the homeopathic medicines really improved the quality of the crops. They made them healthier, more resistant to disease. And this is hugely exciting because it suggests that homeopathy might have a really strong role to play in the future instead of toxic pesticides. We also have laboratory research done on homeopathic medicines, testing them on cells, on frogs. For example, you can show that if you add a homeopathic medicine to the water, then the metamorphosis of tadpoles changes speed.
That research into memory of water and homeopathy could be very important, and so it should be well funded. This is the problem that these unorthodox areas of research have of don't get enough funding. For example, thermonuclear fusion as a way of creating energy probably gets 1,000 times as much funding as cold fusion, which may well be more practical.
Over the years, I've often been asked by friends how it can be true that there is all this strong research evidence demonstrating it works, and yet nobody will believe it. Why are they seeing something different on the news from what I'm telling them? A lot of this is purely financial and economic. It is not possible to patent a homeopathic medicine. There is never going to be a big pharma-style homeopathic medicine. So this is a real problem we have. Simply the cost of very high quality research in homeopathy, these double-blind clinical trials starting at around 1.5 million each. But if you're going to fund research, you want to know you can patent that product at the end and make your billions, as pharmaceutical drugs do. That's not actually possible in homeopathy.
In addition to the body of clinical evidence published in peer-reviewed journals on homeopathy in the treatment of human diseases, there's a very interesting and compelling body of evidence in the use of homeopathic medicine in the treatment of crops and also in fish farming. They found that it not only improved and increased crop yield, but improved and increased the nutritional content in the crops, and did so without the use of pesticides. Farmers are looking to homeopathy as a way of reducing the antibiotic needs and thus providing safer and healthier foods.
What we commonly notice is that when farmers first start using homeopathy, they can be very keen and the level of homeopathic use goes up and up and up. What we also then notice as they do that is that often the need for drugs for crisis management starts to go down because the animals are inherently healthier. We then get a final stage to this process, which is where the use of homeopathy often starts to go down. And I asked the farmer, well, why do you find you're using less homeopathy? He says, Chris, that over the years we found our animals are getting healthier and healthier, and the need for any intervention, be it conventional or homeopathic, becomes less and less and less. They can actually go to the data, they can go to the numbers and say, look, I used to do it this way, and these are the results we get. We've now started incorporating homeopathy, and we got a much better set of results. And they can show you the data, and it's really inspiring to see farmers doing that.
I've been an organic farmer for a long time, and having poultry, I was a little bit worried about what we were likely to do if the animals got ill. And having used homeopathy in the children, it was a sort of light bulb moment that said, well, I can use this on the animals as well. And for 2 decades, we didn't use any antibiotics at all in our poultry.
Antibiotics have been lifesavers for many, many decades. And in the battle against infectious disease, where bacteria come in and create contamination of a wound or infection within the whole body, then they can make all the difference between that patient living or dying. So they're fantastic as far as it goes. However, bacteria have been around for millions and millions of years, and they're survivors. And so what happens is that the bacteria, they mutate. They mutate and they find ways to be resistant to the chemical that is the antibiotic. And because bacteria multiply so very, very fast, this resistance spreads very, very quickly.
When we use antibiotics, it's a necessity. When we use antibiotics on our cows, the milk is discarded without fail, no exceptions. So it's poured down the drain.
We find that within the milking system, that the instance of mastitis in farms is always a key problem for any dairy farmer. What we found with farmers who start to use a whole health approach and applying homeopathy intelligently and creatively and with a good methodology, if they do that well, then you'll find that the incidence of mastitis on these sorts of farms tends to go down. This is for many reasons, partly because homeopathy is very, very good at treating the mastitis, and also it's very good at catching it before it becomes a major problem.
So we're using these remedies to keep the cows in balance, and Andrew himself will tell you there have been some quite exciting revelations for him.
A lot of the results, if you compare them year on year, you notice subtle but significant improvements. One of the things that we have really noticed this year is we've had an awful lot less cases of milk fever. We've had 3 cows with milk fever this year, and all 3 cows were up within 10-15 minutes. And I've not seen that in my 38 years.
We wean really late, so we wait until our ewes are kicking them off and suddenly no mum, no milk. You know, that's a bit of a stress. And we all know that dis-ease leads to disease. So we would drop some appropriate remedies for that into their water trough, pop the remedies into a lemonade bottle or something similar with some water, shake that up, bang it a bit as you walk up the field, tip it in the water trough, job's a good one. When people who've come new to homeopathy and farming and then gone, oh, you won't believe it, you know, I used those remedies and it really worked, and now, you know, none of them are calling, none of them are waiting at the gate, you know, everyone's settled and happy. So for me it's a low cost, very effective way of preempting a lot of the situations.
Budget is always a consideration on a farm, and the bottom line is always important. If we can support farmers in having healthier livestock, where they don't need to spend so much money on crisis management and they can focus on keeping the animals healthy, homeopathy definitely has a place to, you know, shift the way that that budget on the farm gets spent, so that less goes on the emergencies and more goes on the preventative stuff, so the animals can be happy and healthier and more productive in the long run.
Homeopathic remedies are derived from substances found in nature, produced using raw materials from the plant, animal, fungi, and mineral kingdoms.
One of the key features of homeopathy that I think is probably underdone is that it's inexpensive to manufacture homeopathic remedies. There is a very specific and meticulous practice that takes place in those manufacturing pharmacies and then dispensing pharmacies globally, but at the end of the day, it is hugely less expensive than conventional medicines, herbal medicines, and even those medicines that are sometimes used within, say, traditional Chinese medicine or even Ayurveda as well.
Nobody imagines what it takes to do homeopathic medicine according to current regulations.
Since 1938, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act includes homeopathic medicines legally as drugs. So they list the Homeopathic Pharmacopoeia of the United States in the National Formulary. Anything in those books are considered legally drugs.
We have to demonstrate that we are 100% in control of the process. numerous testings, validation processes. It is a system that originally was done for conventional allopathic pharmaceuticals.
We need access to this kind of medicine more than ever. We want what's labeled on the bottle to be inside the bottle. We want good manufacturing practices to be followed, and we think that's what the FDA's role is.
I was in and out of rehabs. I went to 5 inpatient treatment centers. I went to jail 5 times, and I actually went to 5 psych wards. Yeah, it was killing me.
The average number of times a person goes through rehab is 10. That means 9 times it doesn't work. That means 9 times they have to get themselves to the point where they have to admit they don't have control over their addiction. That's 9 times they have to admit and make amends to their family. It's 9 times they might have had to have an intervention with their family. It's 9 times they had to hit bottom. The will of the person to rise up again, to white knuckle it enough, to have the humility to go into rehab once again, is, how can you measure that? That's an extraordinary price for an individual to pay.
So I was 22 years old. My dad was my primary caretaker at the time. I had been going to see doctors for years, and I would come in like a super manic psychotic state, and they would throw some really gnarly antipsychotic medicine at me. The medicines that they gave me, they stripped like everything good about me I lost. My personality, my drive. I'd take like a really heavy antipsychotic medicine. Like I just walk around blankless, listless. There was no life within me. And then I would just get drunk, try and make it feel better, and then eat a bunch of bad food because it gave me this insane appetite. I gained 30 pounds in a month. From the age of 19, I started to deal with like very severe delusions. The delusions ranged from extrasensory perceptions, feeling like I knew what people were thinking when they were thinking it. When I was in the room, I had this energy that was like a movie star walking into the room. That's just how I felt.
Philip was psychotic. He liked talking to television and honestly thinking he was getting a response or feeling that the CIA was after him. You know, just a bunch of really scary things.
I was taking 25 medicines. They couldn't find any medicines that were working. At the vet center, one of my counselors introduced me to Wanda.
I wasn't really sure. I was skeptic about homeopathy. But Wanda came visit me at home here a couple of times and brought me remedies.
One day I woke up and I was feeling a little better. And then I started to feel better. And then I feel, I mean, they gave me stuff that made my mind work better, my eyes work better, aches and pains went away. They hadn't changed my VA medicines or anything like that. And then
one day when I went to the doctor for a checkup, he said to me, "You've experienced a miracle. What happened?" And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, what are you taking? What are you doing? You're way better. You know, you're out of danger. You're out of risk." I said I was doing homeopathy as well as the medicines. They asked me what was I doing? You know, not what they were doing. They asked me what was I doing.
Homeopathy is practiced in most countries.
There are so many people that use homeopathy. There are at least 550 million users of homeopathy globally. We know that there's 220 million folks in Europe that use homeopathy on a regular basis.
We look at the common use in homeopathy in France or in England as well, or Switzerland. What we're seeing is that homeopathy provides a very strong preventative model, so that what we're seeing is a lot healthier population, a lot fewer side effects from regular medication, but not, of course, overusing allopathic medicine.
Today, in Germany, 57% of Germans used homeopathic medicines. In France, 95% of pediatricians and general practitioners incorporate some of homeopathic medicines into their very practice. 54% of French oncologists refer their patients with cancer to homeopathic physicians. This is an integration of taking the best of conventional medicine and the best of homeopathic medicine. This is 21st century medicine.
Switzerland is a really interesting case. Homeopathy is completely normal there, it's well integrated into the public healthcare system, and it continues to be delivered as part of the mainstream medicine in Switzerland.
If there's one country where homeopathy is alive and kicking, it's India. They actually have homeopathic hospitals there, and doctors use only homeopathy. And homeopathic doctors there actually go through medical school, so they study medicine, but they use only homeopathy to treat all the conditions.
100 million people in India rely on homeopathy for all their medical care needs. So that's not only coughs and colds, but we're talking about asthmas, we're talking about pneumonias, we're talking about heart conditions.
It's in every hospital, in every clinic. You get in a taxi there, if you say you're a homeopath, they have ultimate respect for you instantly, which is refreshing. It's just normal and they know it works.
Having worked in Africa for 8 years, they are looking for something that simply works. They don't know whether it's homeopathy, they don't know whether it's conventional medicine, but in rural Africa there is always a need for decent healthcare. I see homeopathy as a vital role to play in actually offering people systems of healthcare which are effective and cheap, and I think homeopathy is perfectly situated for that challenge.
Mary is one of those patients that comes to mind. The first day that I went to the first village, and we got to this place and the whole AIDS group was waiting for us, about 20 widows. And Mary was the third patient. And I just remember her sitting there crying, you know, in the clinic. And that made us cry. Because other than all her physical problems, if I recall, it was extreme weakness, it was pains in the bones, poor sleep, lack of appetite, the stuff now that we've seen 1,000 times, you know. But she was so sad because her husband had died from AIDS and she was left alone with the kids. She had zero money and zero work and zero ability to work. It was just heartbreaking, really, to see her like that.
Nilikuwa na udhaifu, alafu saa ingine kule kuchoka, saa ingine mpaka ukajinyanyapaa mwenyewe ukajiona kwamba hata mimi sifai. Lakini kutokana kuanzia kutumia hizo dawa nikaona ni hali ya kawaida, nikawa na imani.
And she did so remarkably well after a month. I always remember her coming back and so happy and saying, I feel so much better, we want you here, we love your medicine. And she was almost dancing and singing in the clinic, you know. It was such a big difference between that sad woman, you know, full of aches and pains and can't eat and everything else, and the person who I've seen now for 5 years on a fairly regular basis doing so well, you know, CD4 up and healthy and, you know, hardly any problems at all. She survived.
Nilipata furaha iliyoje hata kuelezea kwa kweli naweza nikashindwa, kwa sababu nilisaidika kifamilia kidogo na mpaka mimi mwenyewe nikaona kwamba mimi nina nguvu, kwa sababu nilikuwa sina nguvu tena.
The AIDS virus is a very simple virus yet very sophisticated. And that's homeopathy. It's simple and sophisticated. And it takes like to treat like. And homeopathy just gently stimulates the immune system, but by touching exactly the right point in the patient. People have the innate healing power, but it just sometimes has to be directed properly and stimulated properly, and bang, off it'll go and they'll start getting better.
Homeopathy improved my life greatly, greatly. It's amazing, even though my mind was closed, it still worked. From a skeptic to a true believer.
Albert level out with a healthy plateau to see where it goes from here.
Not only did it change my health, it changed the way that I thought about my health and how to care for myself. It is really underrated. It is amazing what it can do for you. It is amazing how it helped me. Didn't make my hair grow back though.
In looking for how to help him, I thought about homeopathy.
I had never taken a homeopathic remedy, and I didn't really know what to expect. About after a week, I felt different. Like I felt significantly different. And there was this powerful moment that my dad remembers very well where I walked into the kitchen after a week of taking the remedy, and I looked at him and I was just like, I've been crazy, huh? He's like, yeah.
The beauty of homeopathy in the addiction space is that the trauma is healed. Anytime there's a physical or emotional addiction, usually there's underlying trauma, physical or emotional.
I was getting back to myself. I was getting back to who I am, and having that confidence of be like, okay, yes, you had these delusions, they're not real, you know? Believe the things that are in front of you, believe your real life. And what's crazy is that it really wasn't until that aspect of my recovery was taken seriously, until I took the homeopathic remedies, that things got better. Because I would go into treatment and into jail and into psych wards, but I would always be manic and I would always be unable to take the treatment seriously. I'd be there, but I really wouldn't be there. And after I began to come out of that delusion, I was able to go to treatment and get sober.
The whole process was about 2.5 years. You know, it helped turn him around. I'm forever thankful homeopathy saved my son's life.
I celebrated 11 years of sobriety this year. There's nothing more profound in my life than my recovery and my sobriety, and the fact that it began with homeopathic remedies is kind of crazy, but I mean, it is the truth. And I'm super happy to share it because I'm in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. By fully disclosing yourself and our problems to other people, we can help people.
Patients want what works. More and more I find increasing with time is people don't care exactly what it is or even exactly how it's working. People just want to feel good. And if homeopathy is something that can provide that for them, my experience has been that people are open to it. They're like, hey, what's the upside? You know, upside is this could make a huge difference in your life. What's the downside? Well, there's not really that much downside, so okay, let's give it a go.
People feel like they're kind of numbers being walked through a corporate model of medicine, and they're not really receiving the attention and care of being an individual. In homeopathy, they're looking at the totality of the patient's symptoms and lifestyle and conditions that have led to their state of illness. In getting to know that person, both from a psychological, from a physiological point of view, as well as an environmental standpoint, they're able to glean the full state of disease and address it at its root.
Homeopathy is treating the whole individual. It's not trying to take over and control anything. It's helping it function optimally.
Once you really understand what people have suffered and what they've gone through and how they're coping and what their symptoms are, like the real person is there and it's being shrouded by this dark blanket, which is the illness, and then I have the tools to make that better. We homeopaths, we are privileged to be able to enter into the life and the mind and the emotions and the deep feelings of that person and be able to help them. where they hurt.
In a flash, like baby was out in the world screaming, crying. I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. I understand everything now.
We just take in every single moment with this little girl. When I smile at her and she smiles back at me, it's even better than I could have imagined.
There's a time and place for Western medicine, and I never exclude it, but I think homeopathy should be first on the list to at least try.
Instead of having an ongoing management of an illness or condition that never fully resolves, you can see a complete resolution of the problem over time with homeopathy. You'll see that your well-being gradually improves in every aspect. Your relationships improve, your energy improves, digestion, sleep, mood, all of those parameters will improve over the course of treatment with homeopathic remedies. And this is something we just don't see much with conventional medicine.
Listening to cases such as a child with asthma who responded to homeopathy and a child with colitis who responded to homeopathy, my jaw was just dropped because I knew those ailments could be managed with medicines, but I never knew that they actually could be completely healed.
The clinical need for homeopathy is getting greater and greater. And what I mean by that is some of the public health challenges that we are facing today, whether it's the failure of antibiotics, whether it's people taking far too many pharmaceutical drugs, often 5 or 6 different drugs in a cocktail, and nobody has any idea what that particular cocktail is going to do to them. I think we're really reaching a point where people are asking for something different in their healthcare. And homeopathy automatically ticks a lot of the boxes of what people are looking for now. It's individualized, it's gentle, it's green, it's inexpensive, and it's non-addictive. I mean, really, it's just a beautiful form of medicine.
Every year, medicines correctly prescribed encompasses thousands and thousands of deaths, and these are with medicines correctly prescribed.
This is the safest category of drug the FDA has ever regulated and ever probably will regulate.
In the United States, we're talking about a good 20% of the GDP, or the gross domestic product, is spent on healthcare compared to every other country in the world. We are the highest spending country on healthcare, and unfortunately, we do not have the best health rates of any country in the world. Our healthcare system is supposed to be providing good, reliable, decent, sustainable, and health-promoting care, and it's failing. Physician burnout is the highest it's ever been. Taking care of people with chronic illness is estimated to absorb about 75% of our healthcare expenditures in the United States today. When this burden can be taken out of the system, then you can develop a much broader system that can actually more effectively deliver care.
When you're on a conventional medicine on a regular basis, it can add up to thousands of dollars a year, which in the long run is not sustainable for a lot of families.
Whether we're putting in through taxes or whether we're putting in through insurance premiums, we are all paying, and we all end up being responsible for each other's health in one way or another.
I feel like when we started homeopathy, it sort of was like a key, unlocked something for him.
Mm-hmm.
Just this waterfall of eye contact, speech, weight gain, more connection with people. To see your child go from silence to this explosion of development.
That's what I feel like it did for him, and it gives us hope. It feels amazing.
Conventional medicine is always changing. And what was conventional in the 1800s with using highly poisonous substances and bloodletting, today we think, what were they doing? But at the time, that was what was accepted. 10 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, there are going to be things that people in the future are going to look back and say, what were they thinking?
Yes, surgery is important. Yes, sometimes intubation is important, but that's not the first step. So we need to focus on the source and not just look to conventional medicine. And for me, homeopathy is the best medicine that there is.
This is the medicine of the future. This is the medicine we've all been waiting for. This is the medicine we thought we were getting at the doctor's office.
Thinking of my friends whose children have or had cancer, whose children have or had autism, they don't have the bandwidth to advocate for their rights to access. This is something that our generation will be known for. It's the generation that fought for health. Health is our struggle, and we have to shepherd this in and protect our families and their future.
It goes beyond disease, it goes beyond the conventional diagnosis. What you see happen when people are under effective homeopathic treatment is you see them start to blossom in their lives.
When someone's chronically ill and they're in the sickness model, they're just stuck and focused on themselves. When someone's really healthy, now you have a human being that can contribute to life.
The more healthy cells you have in your organs, in your tissues, the more health you have in your overall organism. The same is true in society and the world at large.
Hahnemann said if we really applied homeopathy consistently, generation after generation, we would basically eliminate disease. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful goal to have, wouldn't it? If we had an earth in which there was no disease?
Homeopathy not only helps change the person's life right now, but it releases trauma for the future. It affects the person and the society around them.
The highest level of health is really altruism. Being able to use your physical, emotional, and mental nature to be able to be of use to humanity. That's what true health really is. And that is the goal of homeopathic care.
It is said that the measure of our morality is based on what we leave for the generations that follow. That we leave a better world than the one we inherited. We are not passive bystanders, but active participants in a universal creative process, leading towards greater beauty and order. Humanity's very survival is dependent on those creative, universal laws and principles found in nature. Homeopathy's law of similars is one of those principles that can forever change the course of our relationship to disease, helping to bring humanity to a more harmonious and brighter future.
remedies